Hey guys, sleepy vlog number. I don't know. Am I on 5 or 6? I'll look that up and put it in the title above. So, just a few random, not very important things to talk about, but there you go. Just like talking, I guess. I've, uh, you learn a few things doing videos starring yourself, and one is that I can't talk as succinctly and quickly as I would think. The last video I did, which was about title pages in comics, splash pages, title pages, I was sure it would be like a 2 to 5 minute video, and I just started it, and before I knew it, 20 minutes had passed. So for a professional, succinctness is really important. I'm a total amateur, so it doesn't really matter. I feel like I might get more people listening to me if I could get to my topics more quickly. But I've learned something about myself. I'm long-winded. Probably all my friends knew it. Probably my wife has been rolling her eyes for years. Speaking of which, she just made like the best chocolate cookies ever. Chocolate shortbread with milk chocolate chips in them, so my waistline's in trouble again. Poor me. So some interesting things that I've been listening to or looking at lately include Kieron Gillen's blog, on which he posts his he does a irregular podcast. And Kieron Gillen, in case you didn't know, is a writer mostly with Marvel. He does Thor, and he does one of the, or not Thor, but Journey into Mystery, and he does one of the X-Men titles. And what will he be doing with Marvel now? I can't remember now. Something important. I think he started doing indie comics. I know he did a comic book about collecting vinyl records or something like that. I haven't read it. So how he made his way to mainstream superheroes, I don't know. He's a British writer, and so he does these podcasts where he has discussions with other professionals. And sometimes I don't like these podcasts, or I get tired after a while of all the insidery talk on podcasts. Like I used to listen to Word Balloon a lot, and that was interesting, but I don't know. In a way, you get the world of comic book writers in a way that is less appealing than I would like, or just there's almost an antagonism towards fans and everything. So, but anyway, I only listened to one of his podcasts and I liked it a lot, and I thought it was a very interesting, informative one. And its theme was full scripts versus the Marvel style script, which was invented by Stan Lee and the artists who worked with him early on, where the writer writes a plot. The artist draws it out, just figures out how to tell the story on his own based on that plot, breaking it down into panels and beats on pages and stuff. And then the writer comes back and writes the actual dialogue to match what the artist has drawn. And so they were discussing that versus the full script, where the writer writes full instructions to the artist along with all the dialogue ahead of time. And he did this discussion with himself, Matt Fraction, and Mark Waid. And one of the interesting things is they're saying that the full script became the standard, I think, I don't know when, maybe early 2000s, maybe earlier than that, and people stopped doing the Marvel style, even at Marvel. And now it's slowly coming back. So Matt Fraction has been doing a couple of his books that way. He said he did The Defenders that way, which I haven't read, and he's doing Hawkeye that way, which I still haven't read. I picked up the second printing of #1, and if I like it, I'll pick up #2. But that just the whole podcast shines an interesting light on the way artists and writers work together or don't work together. And that idea that, to me, that the best comic books usually come out of a closer collaboration made it a particularly interesting podcast to me. I'll put the link down below, assuming YouTube lets me put a link out of YouTube. I'm not sure if they allow that. But just lots of interesting stuff, particularly from Mark Waid, who's been around a long time, who started out when the Marvel method was normal and then has saw it phase out and now is seeing it come back. So I guess he's doing it like when he works with Chris Samney, I believe, from what he said, who's doing Daredevil and Rocketeer with him. So that was really interesting. I recommend you all listen to that if you're really into the minutia of the making of comics. And I think I'll be checking out more of Kieron Gillen's podcasts later on. And then another interesting thing, which is available on YouTube in full, is a BBC documentary about Steve Ditko, or more about trying to find out the mystery of Steve Ditko, who doesn't allow interviews. It's almost impossible to find photographs of him. He's still alive, still drawing, I guess. And they do eventually find Steve Ditko, but he doesn't allow himself to be on film or even recorded. But the whole documentary, I think it's an hour long or 40 minutes long, is a great look at comic books and comic book history, and has this scathing interview with poor Stan Lee. I think Stan Lee's position is a little more reasonable than they make it out to be, but on the other hand, it may be wrong. I don't know. These issues, because they interviewed Stan Lee on the idea of whether he created Spider-Man or he created it with Steve Ditko, and Stan Lee has kind of a complicated relationship with that concept. I think writers often feel like they're the real creators. I think artists often think they're the real creators. When I read stuff about Jack Kirby in the Jack Kirby Collector magazine, in some of the interviews with him later on, I can see he felt he did all the creating. He felt the writer had nothing to do with it because he drew it and made things happen. That was his creation. And the writer thinks because he said, "Hey, artist, make this thing called Spider-Man," that's his creation. I can see both sides. But anyway, fascinating movie, and it includes appearances of many other people like Joe Quesada and Howard Mackey, I think his name is, but also Neil Gaiman. And the whole thing is narrated and really created by Jonathan Ross, who us Americans just know as the writer of America's Got Powers, and who the British folk know as some big TV star. So it's really kind of cool to see this big British TV star who's so into comics, and now we know he's so into it that he's started writing comics. And from what I gather, because I haven't read either of his comics, he does a pretty good job. I'll probably be looking at some of them in trades. So, from moving on from history, I sometimes on my lunch breaks at work, I wander over to the Barnes & Noble because it's the closest place of interest near where I work if I have no other important errands to do. And I was just, looking at the newsstand that they have in Barnes & Noble, and kind of they have all the comic books up high. Even the ones for smaller kids are up high. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But the Marvel comics kind of dominate the display. And when you see them all sitting there, 20 in a row, and each one says free on it, it looks like a good deal. It looks like something really good. And I can now see the brilliance in Marvel's free digital program, even if very few people who buy the comics actually download the digital version. And it probably, has very little effect on the purchasing patterns of people in comic book stores. But in the Barnes & Noble setting, you're just attracted to that word free, and it makes all of the Marvel comics jump out at you. And the poor DC comics, I guess, do I have any sitting on my desk at the moment? The poor DC comics don't jump out at you. They just kind of sit there in the background. You don't really probably notice their $2.99 price. If I were DC, I'd make that $2.99 really big and bright. Because I bet even though Marvel sells even their regular $2.99 comics that are $2.99 at the comic book store, they're $3.99 at Barnes and Noble, and I presume at all other newsstands. So yeah, Marvel knows what they're doing with these free digital things. As much as I hate their higher prices and want them to fail. And speaking of my desire for them to fail, there's the whole thing of my subscriptions. I've been getting mail subscriptions of Iron Man, I've mentioned this before, and Captain America. And so far I've got 2 Captain America issues and 5 Iron Man issues. And I really started to like Iron Man a lot. I hated it when I first started reading it, but I've grown accustomed to it. And kind of sad that Matt Fraction will be leaving it. Although Kieron Gillen will be, I think he'll be the new Iron Man writer, and he's quite a good writer, so I'm starting to like him. So that's cool. But anyway, I did want to report that my comics are coming in kind of sometimes almost within the week that they come out, and sometimes way late. So they're inconsistent, but they arrive in good shape. They're wrapped in plastic and backed with a board, and so far all of them have been in good shape that I've received. So I'm pretty pleased with that. So I went ahead and did some more subscriptions with my eye to Marvel Now and what I would be wanting as Marvel Now is starting up. So I added to those a subscription to the Avengers, to Thor, and to the Ultimates. The Ultimates will not be changing with Marvel Now as far as I know, but I'm interested in the Ultimates. They did have Jonathan Hickman on them, so I wish I'd been getting them sooner, but now we're going to have Sam Humphries doing the scripting, and Sam Humphries has been very good on Higher Earth, so I have higher hopes for him on Ultimates. Maybe this cookie's not so good for talking while eating. This is kind of a dry cookie. So yeah, I did that, and then I thought, wait a minute. The titles are officially changing. They're starting with number 1. Will I get them when I subscribe? So I wrote a letter to... Oops, that's not what I want to look at. I'm trying to look for my letter, and I'm actually going to... I wrote a letter to their subscription service, which, as it turns out, is run by Midtown Comics, which I thought was a little strange. So I wrote to them, now that I'm getting my issues regularly, I've gone ahead and added more subscriptions. Since doing that, I started to read about series being canceled and then restarted with slightly different titles under the Marvel Now banner. I hope I can assume that I will automatically have my subscriptions continue with the new versions of these titles. I believe all but one of the titles I've subscribed to will be stopped and then rebooted with the new number 1s with slightly different titles. If this is something you will automatically take care of, I will go ahead and put in a few more subscriptions, because I would really like to subscribe to Mark Waid's Hulk. Maybe I forgot to mention, all of this is because I don't want to buy $4 comic books. So through subscriptions, I get them for about $2.25 or $2 a piece. So I thought, this is good. I'll be getting... And they wrote back, thank you for contacting us. We currently do not know which titles Marvel will make available for subscription after the Marvel Now publishing event. We will have more information available as the event draws closer. As always, we appreciate your patience. Most of the popular titles will only be going through a renumbering, in which case your subscription will remain the same. However, if a particular title is discontinued, it will be switched to a subscription of a similar series. So, I'm not sure. That doesn't seem like a. It seems evasive. It doesn't seem like a guarantee that I will be, as things like Thor go from the Mighty Thor to the something else Thor, or the Hulk goes from the Incredible Hulk to the not Irresistible Hulk, I forget what it's called. Anyway, I think it's still worth a risk. So I'm gonna continue with the subscriptions. I get lots of comics from the comic book store, and so it's okay to have some comics that just don't come in quite so timely a manner. Especially because I just wouldn't buy them I won't buy $4 comics for the most part. I'd make a few exceptions here and there. From Marvel right now, I'm buying Thor's because I'm into the crossover event, and soon I'll be getting the Thor in subscription anyway. So there's that. For those of you who are at all curious about the whole process with subscribing. Yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to blather on about right now. There's tons of good videos in the comics community right now, from the excellent Minutia Minute Beardo's series on Batman, covering the whole modern age. He just does such a great job of making just watching some comic book covers interesting. Gives you enough interesting information and then moves on about each comic in each series. It's really informative. So many people have these great Batman collections. I like Roger with Numbers in Puerto Rico has a lot of great Batman stuff, and I watch it. And eventually I should start collecting Batmans. But I feel like since everyone has that, and I have other odd areas that I want to focus on for now. But someday I'd like to have a great Batman collection like these guys do. Great Howler Mouse videos lately. Just watched 2 of his where he's dressed up in his bathrobe and just showing us odd, interesting little comics, and it's fascinating. Lots of other good ones, and now I'm not thinking of them. I've been really enjoying Gambit 896's trade reviews. I've mentioned other new people in some of my other videos that I've been watching a lot. Cursive Man remains great. Ghost Critic remains great. So many other people. Comic Book Corner, A Comic Book Mom, love them all. Judge Dreadful is another good new one. The Captain Comic. There's so many. This thing is growing, and it's really good. And I think in the last week or nearly a week, I put up nearly a video a day. And that's probably wrong because there's too many videos. But what the heck. Anyway, so I'm just loving all the stuff you guys are doing. And yeah, I mentioned Mongo Stomp Time. James Crowder 77's reviews are really good. Always been good. Probably getting better. Poet Skinny keeps trucking along. I almost cried when I heard Oddfellow Thoughts might not be able to put up a review this week. I love it when he and Ethan do reviews together. Good to have a son that keeps you on your toes. So I will probably be putting up another video soon. Talk to you guys later. Chocolate cookie time.